Welcome to Lair the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. For today's episode, another in a series of what I call In Defense Of. This is where I take an album that I really like, that a lot of other people don't care for, that maybe the critics panned it, and maybe even the band themselves don't care for it. So the album that I've picked for today is the 1969 album by The Doors called The Soft Parade. This is an album that lands up at the bottom of a lot of people's lists when they're ranking the Doors catalog. And I can sort of understand that because the Doors have so many great albums. All their albums are great in my opinion. Somebody has to land at the bottom, and it's often The Soft Parade. But I think some of the criticism that this album gets is a little bit unfair. What turned some people off to this record was there were a lot of strings and horns on this. It was sort of a departure from their bluesier, grittier, sometimes psychedelic sound of their first three records. Their first three albums, they had just become hugely popular. And after their third record, they were touring stadiums. They did a huge long tour for that album. And when the time came to record The Soft Parade, they were a little burnt out. They didn't have any new songs written. So when they entered the studio, they had to write the songs there. And the producer, Paul Rothchild, suggested that why don't you try going in a different direction, a more experimental direction. And he suggested the horns and the strings. And Ray, Robbie, and John, they loved the idea because they have a jazz background and incorporating the horns they felt would be really cool. But Jim was a little bit not sure about that. So the strings and the horns, for some people, it's a little bit too much. For me, it works, and I think it adds a really interesting texture to the sound of the band. It's them sort of trying some different things, moving out in some different directions. And I think it's a great album to put headphones on and listen to all this other stuff that's going on. They might have felt a little pressured. Like at that time, the Beatles had released Sgt. Pepper and the White Album and the Rolling Stones with their Satanic Majesty's Request. So it was kind of an era of people trying different things. And this was the Doors doing that. And for me, it works. I think that there's a lot of great songs on this record. The big song from this album is Touch Me. The biggest hit off this record, one of the best Doors songs, and I think the horns and the strings just work magnificently on that song. It is just absolutely great. The whole ending of the song, Strong Bird, that is just great. The way the horns build, the saxophone solo in it is just, yeah, it's fantastic. It totally works. I also really love the opening track, Tell All the People. That's one of my favorite like Doors sort of deep cut songs. I think it's just absolutely great. I love the horn arrangement. I love Jim's delivery of it. He delivers to me in like a cool crooner kind of way. For some reason it reminds me of like Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra always had big bands behind him with horns and strings, and Jim is sort of like this cool Frank Sinatra delivery in that song, which I think is great. This was also the first Doors album where the writing credit was, normally they just credited everything to all the guys, the Doors. But on this record, they split it up. They split them up, and it came down to just Robbie Krieger and Jim Morrison writing songs. So the first two songs, Tell All the People and Touch Me, were Robbie Krieger songs. The songs that have less strings and horns in them tend to be the Jim songs. So the next one, Shaman Blues, is a Jim song, and it's got this great like kind of 6/8 waltz, syncopated waltz, swingy thing, and it's got this like blues like never be another girl like you. I think it's awesome. It's great delivery from Jim. Some people knock this record like, oh well, Jim was out of it and his heart wasn't really into it. I don't notice that. And you know, when I was younger and I was buying these records, I didn't have, this was way before the internet, so I didn't have any critics to listen to, or I just bought them and I just took them in the way I heard them. And for me, I like this just as much as the other records. Yeah, if I had to rank the albums, this would probably be at the bottom of my list, but that doesn't mean that I don't think it's a good album and that there aren't some things on here that are really worth giving a listen to. Then you have Do It, which is a Morrison and Krieger co-write. It's kind of a cool, fun, upbeat one. Easy Ride, that's okay, that's kind of cool. Probably not my favorite on the record. Wild Child is a great blues number in the gym. Fantastic vocal delivery, not unlike maybe Backdoor Man, you know, that kind of vibe from Jim, that bluesy vibe, which I just love. I think he sounds great on that one. Runnin' Blue, it's a fun one. It's kind of like a country blues thing with like a banjo sounding kind of thing. A lot of people criticize that song because Robbie Krieger sings the chorus in it and like, oh, it's proof that Jim wasn't really into this record. But I don't buy that. I think that that's just a narrative that was put, it just grows over time. Sometimes albums, they get a certain a storyline evolves around them, and then it's just hard for that album to shake that. And this album again has that story that, oh, they were burnt out, Jim didn't want to be there, etc., etc. And this is the proof of it. Running Blue, Robbie Krieger sings the chorus in it, but it's okay. I think it adds to the song. It makes sense. It's this fun kind of country blues song. So Wishful Sinful, another really cool one, kind of a ballad. And here another one where the strings and everything really add to the song, and it really works. And then another one of my favorites here, the title track, the last song on the album, Soft Parade. It's a pretty long song with a bunch of different shifting moods. I love Morrison's delivery in this. It's him doing his poetic thing, his poetry style lyrics, where you have all this sort of crazy imagery, monks, and all this different stuff that really gets your head thinking. And I think he sounds great on this. And I love the part where it goes into sort of the shifts gears all of a sudden, and goes into like this funky thing. And he does the this is the best part of the trip. This is the trip. I just think it's great, and it's a cool song that has all these different changes in it and some really cool Jim Morrison lyrics from on it. And the whole album, everybody to me sounds great on this record. Ray Manzarek on keys has some cool stuff. Robbie Krieger, I think, has some awesome guitar playing, like in Wild Child and Shaman Blues. John Densmore sounds great on the drums throughout this whole thing. So for me, it's just a really cool Doors album, and it's a fun album for me to come back to, because for some of the other albums, a lot of the songs have landed up on greatest hits records and stuff, and I've heard a lot of them. Songs like Light My Fire, I've heard them so many times. This is a fun album to come back to, because haven't heard all these songs constantly. Really, Don't Touch Me was the only song that really got any airplay off of this, and they didn't do a lot of these songs live. So there's a lot of fun things that I can dive into on this record. It's a fun headphone record, and just overall, I think it's a cool album. It's them trying something a little bit different. Would I've wanted them to just continue in this vein? Probably not. But for what it is here, I think it works. I think it's fun. It sits nicely in the catalog of the Doors, and I just think it's a good album that deserves more respect than it gets. All right, so there you go. The Doors' Soft Parade, my defense of that record. Let me know in the comments what you think of this album. Make sure you hit subscribe and like. And until we see you again, make sure you stay heavy, stay metal.